The British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, landed in Beijing. This was a very important moment. It was the first time a UK leader visited China in 8 long years. This visit broke a long silence between the two powerful countries. Many important business leaders from Britain came with him. They hoped for new deals and a better future. The UK economy was not doing well. It was close to a recession, which means a very bad time for money and jobs. The world was also very unstable. US President Donald Trump was causing big changes and making things uncertain for many countries. This made Prime Minister Starmer's trip even more important. People had many questions. Was this trip a smart move by Starmer to help Britain? Could he save the UK economy? Or was it a risky deal with a very strong, authoritarian country? Some people worried that Britain might lose its values if it made too many deals with China. They wondered if this visit would help the nation or hurt its soul. As Starmer stepped off the plane, a group of top British CEOs stood with him. He spoke to the media. He said clearly, "China matters." This simple sentence showed that he believed working with China was important for Britain. But as he looked out at the Chinese officials, no one really knew what would happen next. Was he starting a great new partnership for history books? Or was he walking into a clever trap set by a powerful nation? The answer was not clear. 2. Why go to China? Britain and China once had good relations, a golden era. This meant they worked well together. But things changed 8 years ago, and their friendship froze. A big reason was Hong Kong. China introduced a new security law there, which many in the UK and other countries did not like. Britain responded by letting many Hong Kong citizens move to the UK and stopped an agreement with Hong Kong. Worries about China spying also grew. Britain even stopped using a Chinese company, Huawei, for its new 5G phone networks. China's support for Russia after it invaded Ukraine also made relations worse. For 8 long years, Britain and China did not talk much. By 2026, Britain's economy was in serious trouble. Money was not growing fast. It was very slow. Then US President Donald Trump put high taxes, called tariffs, on many British goods entering America. This hurt British companies, especially car makers, very badly. Exports to the US dropped a lot. Some experts thought Britain could even fall into a recession, meaning the economy would get smaller. At home, many people lost their jobs. The number of people without work rose to 5.1%, the highest in years. Britain desperately needed to find new ways to make money and trade. China, being the world's second biggest economy, was a necessary place to look. Prime Minister Starmer understood this problem. He knew Britain had to act. He said, "Like it or not, China matters for the UK."
His trip to China was not an easy choice. It was a desperate one. Starmer had to find money for Britain, but he also had to think about Britain's national security and other important issues. This was a very delicate balancing act. Britain's economy was on a knife's edge. Starmer knew he had to make a deal, but what would Britain truly have to pay? Meeting the leader. The next day, January 29, 2026, was important. Prime Minister Starmer went to meet President Xi Jinping. The meeting was in a very large building called the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. It was an imposing place, meaning it looked very important and powerful. Inside the hall, the atmosphere was tense. Starmer and Xi sat across from each other. They smiled for the cameras, but everyone knew this meeting was serious. It lasted 80 minutes, which was twice as long as planned. This showed how much there was to talk about, or how difficult the talks were. The two leaders used careful words. They talked about the world being complex and intertwined. President Xi spoke about the need for dialogue and cooperation. He warned that if big countries did not follow international laws, the world could become like a jungle. This was a strong message. Neither leader said the name Donald Trump, but the American president's actions and policies were a shadow over their talks. His challenges to old world orders were clearly on their minds.
Prime Minister Starmer spoke about building a long-term, consistent, and comprehensive strategic partnership with China. He said the United Kingdom and China needed to work together on important things like climate change and global stability. He also said he raised issues about human rights. This showed the delicate balance he tried to keep. President Xi seemed to understand that Starmer faced criticism for coming to China. He said that good things often come with difficulties. He added that leaders should not be afraid of problems if they do what is right for their country. The meeting ended with handshakes and polite words about a new strategic partnership. Publicly, it seemed like a good start. But real deals are often about money. The nearly 60 British business leaders came with Starmer. Companies like AstraZeneca, HSBC, and British Airways were there. What were these important people promised behind closed doors? What secret deals were made to get their support for this new path? The answers would shape Britain's future. 4. Good news for business. The trip brought important good news for Britain's economy. Businesses saw clear benefits from Prime Minister Starmer's visit to China. It was a major payoff for his big gamble, bringing real economic wins for the UK. One big win came from AstraZeneca, a large British pharmaceutical company. It announced a huge plan to invest $15 billion in China until 2030.
This money would help build more factories and research places. These would focus on new treatments for cancer, autoimmune diseases, and blood problems, as well as cell therapy and radioconjugates. This massive plan would also create many more jobs, making AstraZeneca's team in China grow past 20,000 people. This was a massive boost for a flagship British company, showing its strong growth and investment. China also agreed to help British exports. It would cut the import tax, called a tariff, on British whiskey. This tax went from 10% down to 5%. This was excellent news for Scotland's whiskey makers and their sales, opening up more market opportunities. Another positive step was for travelers. British people can now visit China for up to 30 days without needing a visa. This makes business and tourism easier and quicker between the two countries. The two nations also agreed to work together on security and climate change. They even talked about stopping illegal migration, setting up new lines of cooperation. These concrete outcomes made Prime Minister Starmer's practical approach look very successful. His government believed these deals would bring much-needed money into the UK, helping its struggling economy. The team felt happy, celebrating these diplomatic wins that promised a stronger financial future. It truly seemed like a triumph for Starmer's pragmatic approach, with billions of dollars set to flow into the UK.
However, this celebration did not last long. Just as Starmer's team felt confident and positive about their achievements, a news story broke. It was about one British citizen, a single person whose fate suddenly became important. This news had the power to undo all the diplomatic success
and put everything at risk, threatening to unravel the entire victory that Starmer had worked so hard to achieve. 5. A big moral question. The good news about new money for Britain did not last long. A dark problem quickly appeared. It was about a British man named Jimmy Lai. He was 78 years old and owned a newspaper in Hong Kong. Jimmy Lai was in prison. He had been found guilty of serious charges, like planning to work with foreign groups and publishing things against the government. Many people felt these charges were wrong. Lai's newspaper, Apple Daily, often wrote critical things about China. Because of this, authorities closed it in 2021. Jimmy Lai's situation was very bad. He had been held in prison since December 2020. For much of that time, he was alone in a cell. This is called solitary confinement, and human rights groups say it is a type of torture. His family worried a lot about his health. He suffered from diabetes and heart problems. Even though he was a British citizen, Hong Kong officials did not let British staff visit him. This went against international rules. His son, Sebastian Lai, spoke out many times.
He asked the British government to help his father. He said, "How can you expect a good relationship if they cannot even send a 70-year-old man who is very sick back home?" This question showed the hard choice Prime Minister Starmer faced. Was making money more important than helping a British citizen in trouble? People in Britain, including opposition leaders, criticized Starmer. They said he cared more about business than human rights. Starmer said he talked to President Xi about Jimmy Lai and other human rights issues. He called their talk respectful. But after the meeting, Jimmy Lai was still in his prison cell. There were no signs that he would be released or get better medical care. It seemed the big business deals had not helped this one British man's freedom. This was the real challenge for Starmer. He had to balance Britain's need for money with its moral duty to protect its people. While his team celebrated new investments and easier travel, Jimmy Lai remained behind bars. Just as this difficult moral question became very clear, a strong and angry message came. It was from Britain's most powerful friend, and it threatened to make things much worse. 6. Trump is not happy. President Trump was not happy. After Prime Minister Starmer's visit to China, a strong message came from Washington, D.C. President Trump spoke to reporters, giving a clear warning. He said that the UK doing business with China was very dangerous.
His words showed new tension between old friends. This made things very difficult for Britain and America. The two countries shared a long and special relationship, working closely on many issues. But President Trump's recent actions and trade policies often made this friendship hard. He was known for using high taxes on foreign goods, called tariffs. These tariffs could deeply hurt Britain's economy. Experts warned that new tariffs from Trump could even push the UK into a recession. This threat hung over Britain like a heavy weight. Prime Minister Starmer now faced a very tough choice. He had gone to China to find new ways to help Britain's economy grow. He hoped to keep strong ties with China while also having a good relationship with the United States. He had stated Britain would not need to choose between them. But with President Trump's angry words, this balance was under threat. Britain needed its new economic connections with China,
and its long-standing alliance with America. The Prime Minister had tried to work steadily with President Trump, but the American president's unpredictable nature always made things tricky. The special relationship was changing fast. For many decades, London and Washington usually agreed on world matters. Now, Trump's willingness to use tariffs against allies changed everything. It seemed Starmer was caught in a dangerous situation. His bold visit to China brought deals, but also angered the American president.
It looked like Britain was dangerously isolated, trapped between an angry American leader and a strong Chinese one. But was Prime Minister Starmer truly alone in this big global change? 7. Other countries do it too. Prime Minister Starmer's trip to China was a big event, but he was not the only Western leader who went to Beijing that month. In fact, many countries were looking to China for new partnerships in January 2026. This was a secret, but many world leaders were traveling to Beijing at the same time. Irish Taoiseach Michael Martin was one of the first. He visited China early in January. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung also had important meetings with Chinese leaders on the same day. Later, Finnish Prime Minister Petteri Orpo came for 4 days, bringing leaders from more than 20 Finnish companies. Most notably, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney had visited in the middle of January. He secured deals to make Chinese electric cars cheaper and Canadian canola oil more affordable. These visits were not a coincidence. They showed a bigger change happening in the world. Many Western nations felt unsure about the United States under President Donald Trump. His trade policies, like putting tariffs on goods, made traditional friends of America look for new ways to keep their economies strong. They were hedging their bets. This means they did not want to rely on just one powerful country. They wanted more options for their economies, just in case.
For China, these visits were good. They helped China show itself as a stable partner, especially when the U.S. seemed less predictable. China welcomed these leaders. It offered new trade agreements and ways to work together. The 5 countries that visited in January, Ireland, South Korea, Canada, Finland, and the United Kingdom, together had a very large economy. This was not just about making money. It was the quiet start of a big shift in how the world works. These countries were trying to protect their own interests and find their place in a new global order. They were looking for stability and new opportunities. But this new path carried a risk. By turning to China for economic stability, were these countries accidentally helping to build a new world order? A world that might be less free and perhaps more dangerous? 8. What happens next? Prime Minister Starmer's trip to China showed Britain's new place in the world. It was a big gamble, and it had both good and bad results. On the good side, there were clear economic wins. AstraZeneca, a big British medicine company, promised to invest $15 billion in China. This was a huge boost for British business. China also lowered taxes on British whiskey, making it cheaper to sell there. Also, British people can now visit China without a visa for up to 30 days. These things brought money and new chances for Britain. But there were also big problems.
The case of Jimmy Lai, a British citizen jailed in Hong Kong, showed a hard moral choice. Starmer talked about human rights with President Xi, but Jimmy Lai stayed in prison. This made many people question if Britain was putting money before its values.
The trip also hurt Britain's friendship with the United States. President Donald Trump was very unhappy. He called Britain's business with China very dangerous. This put stress on the special relationship between the two countries. Britain now had to choose its path carefully, caught between two powerful nations. So, what happens next? Is this pragmatic engagement with China a good long-term plan for Britain? Or is it just a quick fix for current problems? The world is changing fast. Trump's actions and China's growing power mean countries like Britain must find new ways to act. Starmer's visit changed Britain's standing in the world. Britain is now finding its way on a new and unsure path, balancing old friends and new needs. It shows a future where countries must work with different powers, even if they disagree. What do you think? Was Starmer's visit a success for Britain, or did it cost too much?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.